All right, all right, all right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is, well, you guys know who I am, but my name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussion 76, my original channel. First of all, please like this stream slash video. Please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. I am going to Well, guys, I have a special guest who is back. It's always a pleasure to have him here. Um, and we're going to talk about something very interesting today. But before I jump into my opening words and I bring BGS up, I just want to show this because this came up on my science stream on Friday with Nicole. If you guys haven't seen it, me and Nicole Ali had an interesting talk on Friday around lunchtime on my science channel about prostate cancer and uh, the different aspects of prostate cancer. So let's see, my blogging platform is there. That's the first line. But if there are any questions for me, or if you want to ever reach out to me via email, you can reach out to me there via that email, bigdiscuss76 at bigwordsarepowerful.com. I know that's a handful. I have a Big Words blog site, Facebook page. That's my Twitter handle and my Instagram handle right there. I'm on Twitter, so I'm always BGS's as well. So I'm always seeing when BGS tweets stuff. So and sometimes he retweets my stuff, I retweet his stuff. So that's yeah. So guys, I'm just going to talk for a few more minutes to set this up, and then me and BGS will start the Q&A. Let's see. So on this channel, right now, you guys know I've split it off into several channels, like Round Wheels. Shout out to the Field Master. If you haven't watched our discussion, you should go back and watch our discussion from 2 to 3 weeks ago. But over here, I talk about now general topics. And today, probably more so than ever before, we're going to talk about education because we're going to talk about the Prussian school system or the Prussian education system. And that's something that if you're probably familiar with that if you're in the education world. My father is a retired educator, and I think the next time I talk to him, I will ask him if he is familiar with this because he's a retired middle school science teacher, but we never talked about how the entire educational system works in general, aside from the fact that he was getting blamed for um, the low performances of his students. So I'm going to ask him about this. But if you're in the education world, this is probably not new to you. This term in this area has been coming up quite a bit in the sphere. And as I'll describe, as I was thinking about topics going forward here, I was literally in the shower, doing what I was doing. I said, "Oh, the Prussian school system. That might be interesting to talk about." So that's how this stream came about. So most of you guys know that I earned my PhD from the University of Michigan, right? So I spent about 5 to 6 years doing research in Ann Arbor. My backgrounds are in pharmacology and toxicology. But before that, I attended, and only the Buffalo folks will really know this. If Wayman Brown is out there, he'll know that's Hutch Tech High School in Buffalo. That is our lone technical high school. So you had to take an entrance exam to get in there, which means you kind of had to have some smarts to get in there. And I'm saying this to say that in my family, uh, both my parents are college educated, and even though I didn't turn into a good student until college, education was encouraged early on, and so that's just what we did. We were reared, and we got up, and we got on the bus. We went to school every day, sat in class, learned, every year learned some English, some social studies, some math, some science, and whatever other electives they wanted us to learn. It could be, could have been things like foreign language. I am a 70s baby, so I recall in elementary school we did have shop. I think those things have gone away. We did have shop. We did have home economics. We did have music class. Over the years, I've heard that some of these things have been stripped away for other things, but I'm saying this to say that it was assumed going into that pipeline was assumed, and we never questioned going into that pipeline. Again, both my parents were college educated, and so it was assumed, okay, our sons will go to school, get good grades, go into the college system, start careers, and become productive members of society. But as I'm sure BGS will discuss when he comes up, this is a larger machine with intentions, with greater intentions besides that which my parents wanted for us. Let's see. So, just briefly, there's a lot happening in the school systems right now, at the college level and even in the lower levels. And a lot of there are some alarming things happening for some people. I won't get into that right now, but I know that over on the Roger Report, one of the frequent guests over on the Roger Report is another gentleman who I highly respect, another elder who I highly respect, Black Uru. One of the things Black Uru talks about is even if you don't have children, it's important for us to go to the meetings and have our voices heard. So there are a lot of things happening, in the school system right now. So, some things that weren't happening 20, 30 years ago. I'm sure some of that will come up. So before I bring BGS up, I just thought it would be interesting to kind of set the table for this. So we're going to talk about the Prussian school system, or the Prussian education system. One obvious question for those of you who don't know, what was Prussia? Okay, so I have that queued up here. Prussia was actually, BGS, please correct me when you come up, was actually a part of what is now modern day Germany. So we're over in Europe. And in my brief research for this, the genesis for this Prussian school system was actually Prussia's defeat in the Napoleonic Wars. So if you guys have if you're tight on your history, you know that Napoleon was, for I'll just say a warlord over there, and he built his army and his own empire, and he was warring with numerous countries and kingdoms back in Europe. And from my research, my brief research, because I'm not an expert on this, Prussia's defeat at the hands in the early Napoleonic Wars is what brought this system about. And then, so why does all of this matter today? Well, if you've been listening to any of the discussions here in the sphere, and if you are looking at, again, what's happening in the school systems now in 2021, I think this will kind of give you a better understanding of where things are and why things are where they are, because there are some people, and this is going to come up in a question I have for BGS. There are some people believe that the school systems are involved in more social programming now, more social dogma, and that the school system should get back to just teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, and also, again, this is all part of a larger machine, and the state itself has intentions for our lives that we can't see and we don't understand. So guys, with that, I'm going to bring the master teacher up, and we'll start this Q&A. And if he feels like hanging around and entertaining some of you guys afterwards, I'll open it up. So here we go. Good morning, Master Teacher.
Hey, Dr. Dunbar, what's going on?
Nothing much. How are you?
I heard rumors about Dr. Goodbar showing having a sighting, but that's
Yeah,
just a
yeah, man.
rumor.
I'm still rubbing my eyes here. Got my last cup of coffee here, so ready to learn something.
Okay, so where do we start?
And actually, coincidentally, with the cop last night, he mentioned this very topic. He mentioned the Prussian school system.
Hmm.
We're talking about numerous things, but this is popping up, everywhere.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, because if you actually read the history of the Prussian school system, it actually started in Prussia. It's actually started with Frederick the First in 1765, right? And was actually um, they Frederick the First actually was actually a Calvinist. He was actually a Calvinist reformist, and what he wanted to start is a ordered society. In other words, uh, Europe, right, was all over the place. Especially the Germans, they were all over the place with different kinds of um, levels of not only good but also corruption. And the Calvinists or the Piety movement was about getting back to a more ordered, a more how can I say uh, uh, not sanctified, but a more moral society, right? And so what what Frederick the First did was says, okay, we're gonna, they got with the Calvinist priest and said, or the pious Calvinist priest and said, okay, how do we uh, how do we make a more ordered, more structured, more wholesome society? So the first thing they did was say, okay, first thing we have to do is take the kids out of the home. And so a lot of what you see as far as the structure that you see as far as kindergarten and middle school and even high school, which high school is for higher learners for the Prussian officers going into the army. That's what high school is actually for. That's why they call it high school or gymnasium as they called it. Um, it was actually to take the kids out of home and actually mechanize or basically structure how education was actually formed. Because before education was actually done either through the church, because people think that socialization was never in the schools. That's not true because if most of the schools before the public school system that pressure really started was actually done by the church. You either done either in the home, if you're poor, you couldn't afford it, or it was actually done by the church. And socialization was going to go on someplace. So they figured if you want to mechanize or standardize instruction, you had to take the kids out of the home and put them in a special spot. That's where the school system started. It had to be funded by not only the state but also the society, which was actually a departure from what schools had been. Departure. The schools had to either been funded by the parents paying out of their pocket or by the church. So if you, but a long time ago, if you wanted to have an educated child, you have to take one child, one of your kids, off the farm and send them to a uh, a monastery to be educated by the priest. So,
wow.
but Frederick the First, he said he wanted all of Prussia to be that way. So he actually, uh, it said the Prussia, the Prussian villages are actually going to fund this this public school system, um, this school system for all the kids to go to. So that's where it started in 1765, and then because Prussia was just part one of the German states. Okay, it was the most militaristic, but it's one of the German states, and that's where the Prussian order society actually comes from. It comes from the Calvinist pious movement that's actually based on militarism, and the highest example of of Prussia or the Prussian model was actually uh, the Prussian officer that was supposed to be highly moral, highly educated, very strict, very ordered, um, and that was the model that they wanted to build off of. And then when uh, when Napoleon came through Central Europe and into Russia, um, they had to figure out a way how to organize all these little German states, all these little German villages, because they had just gotten run through. And since since the Prussian school system had already been there, had already been a success because most of your German officers actually came through the Prussian system. They said, okay, it's easier to actually adopt that model and put it and actually adopt it to all the German states. In other words, the biggest catch of the Prussian school system is that it's free, compulsory, but it's free. And most, even now, even in the United States, if you go to a third world country, most people cannot afford, parents cannot afford to send their kids to school. If it wasn't for the state, most people could not afford to educate their children by themselves. So the biggest catch for the Prussian school system back then was it was free. It was free. It was organized. It had a set curriculum, and it's supposed to work like a factory system. Basically, we have a standardized way of teaching the kids, standardized curriculum, and then they're supposed to come out, go in on one end uneducated, come out on the other end with a standardized education, which back then was revolutionary. Today, since it's been around so long, we have issues with it. But back then, it was actually revolutionary, which is why England, France, Japan, all these other countries adopted that model because it was revolutionary for its time.
Okay, I want to read this super chat. Yeah, if you guys want to super chat questions or comments, I have a super chat on this channel. My Cash App and PayPal are there. I'm going to read this by Aisa. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, "Shout out to Dr. Dunbar. I'm a strong believer in the ruthless nice guy theory. Shout out to the Roger Report. Long live individual line steppers." Okay, so BGS. Actually, I was going to read through some of the bullets
Go ahead.
about it, but before I do, one of my questions was, as a fellow STEM guy, how did you? I mean, BGS, you're a bit of a Rhodes Scholar, so but
No.
how did you get interested in this in the first place? Because this is very nuanced, very
Actually, it
specialized.
was years ago listening to Pacifica, and I got introduced it through you probably know him, John Taylor Gatto,
Okay,
which he's kind of like a radical educator. So he likes the public education system, but he doesn't like the structure or the stricture of the Prussian school system. So he's actually an opponent of it. But the thing is, through John Taylor Gatto, I got to introduced to it, and so I started researching it. This maybe about 30 years ago. What it is, why it is, and how it came about. And then recently, I knew about Napoleon and Fichte and why they implemented it into all of Germany. But and recently actually reading, I think the Iron Kingdom about Prussia. Then I actually learned where it actually started from in Prussia. Okay, the Prussian school system was actually a model that all of Germany adopted. But the original Prussian school system was actually started by Calvinist priests, and
okay,
then it bubbled out into the rest of the world.
okay. I'm going to read. Uh, these are some bullets, and in the blogging world, Wikipedia is not considered a reliable source, but I think this is just
A
kind of
good place
captures.
to start. Yeah.
Yes, the place to start. And thank you, Barry Little, for the $10 super chat. Hashtag support your scholars.
Yes, sir. Always.
So the Prussian system had by the 1830s attained the following characteristics. Some of these, which you already mentioned: free primary schooling, at least for poor citizens, professional teachers trained in specialized colleges, a basic salary for teachers and recognition of teaching as a profession, an extended school year to better involve children of farmers,
Hmm.
funding to build schools, supervision at national and classroom level to ensure quality instruction, curriculum inculcating a strong national identity,
Hmm.
involvement of science and technology, and then finally, secular instruction, but with religion as a topic included in the curriculum. Now, okay,
Hmm.
we're gonna get around to that, but this is as again I was a '70s baby, so this is all I know. Those bullets
Yes.
right there.
Well,
That was my experience.
it's still everybody's experience. They haven't changed the model. The model still exists. They always tinker with the model about what goes in and what goes out. But the thing is, the basic structure is still the same. In fact, I was just in my grandson's classroom. Even the Catholic school system basically follows the same model. The model is still the same.
Okay. All right. And I guess at some point we'll get around to what's wrong with the model or what's happened with the model over the years. You shared a link with me yesterday.
Hmm.
It was very dense. It was
Yeah,
very
yeah,
dense. And,
effective. Yeah.
one of the major themes, and I've heard you mention this. One of the major themes I was able to distill out of that was this was all being done with the state in mind,
Yes.
or for the growth and survival of the fatherland
Yes.
at that time.
Yeah.
So as you described, that's essentially what this system is designed for.
Socialization first. Yes.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to ask you this. So it's interesting that you stated that the intent is for the socialization to take place at the school. Well, one of
Hmm.
the things that we're kind of going around and around in circles about now is parents dropping their children off and expecting the school to raise them and do do everything. Which the argument has been made that that's not the school's job. The teachers are there to teach reading, writing, arithmetic, science, and whatever. But from what you said, it sounds like that was one of the intents of this system.
Yeah, I mean, to actually bind together and socialize children, and it still does, and it still is. But I think parents have. It's not supposed to be complete. I mean, you're still supposed to be go home. You're still supposed to be individually socialized by your parents, um, uh, raised by your parents. And I think modern day parents want to just drop the kid off and keep going. But the thing is, also the thing is that um, this the country that we have now is so complex now that the school alone can't do it. At least not the school at the primary level, at the public level. You can't offload all of that onto the school anymore. Um, Back then, a basic education went a long way. I don't think it's the same way now.
Okay. All right. So looking at the speech that you shared with me,
Hmm.
it also seemed like there was a bit of a well, I guess this rolls into socialization.
Yes.
It involves how the person thinks and how the person sees life and sees the state,
Yeah, the worldview. Yeah,
the
of
worldview. Okay,
the.
so
Uh huh.
that was also that's also an intent of this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
by educate by introducing the curriculum, just because you're a STEM guy, right?
yes.
And through the lens of STEM, mathematics, and all that kind of stuff, it shapes your worldview, whether you like it or not. How you see the world. Most people don't see the world. Well, STEM guys see the world in numbers. They see
Hmm.
we see patterns and we see numbers where most people don't see patterns and numbers because that's the way our mind has been shaped by our curriculum. Same thing in basic curriculum. What you read, the books that you read, the history that you read, your social studies, everything shapes your worldview because your kid is there from 6 to 8 hours a day. Okay, in that system, they spend more time in that system than they do with you. So that's a point of socialization, and um, if you've ever tried to teach a kid by itself, right? Which is one powerful thing of the school system is socialization. It's it's like being in basic training, for lack of a better term, right? It's far easier to teach a kid to comply when they're in the midst of 30 other people. Because if you're in the midst of 30 other people and you're not following the line, you're the oddball. And especially for children, human beings actually want to be in sync rather than being out of sync with their peers. So it's far easier to train a kid within the midst of like 20, 30 kids rather than by himself. So that's where the socialization comes in almost by osmosis.
Okay. Now, I want to thank Aquateki for the Cash App, much appreciated. In terms of socialization and loyalty to the state and
Hmm.
to your country.
Yeah.
I
Remember the Pledge of Allegiance?
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
I recall, at least when I was in K through 12, we had to
Hmm.
stand and do the pledge every morning. But that's hasn't that gone away?
Yes,
Or
it has.
are they still okay? That's interesting. That's interesting.
You see, people thought, well, let's get back to lack of socialization, but you don't realize the little things that you do every day that socialize you that they took out of the schools.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
some religious, if you go further back, there was religion in the schools. Okay, they
Yeah.
took that out too. Okay,
Yeah.
that socialized people.
Yeah. Black Guru was talking about that over on the Roger Report. That when he was in K through 12,
Uh huh.
yeah, the teachers were openly
Yeah.
religious, and those principles were more easily shared with the students.
Yeah.
But now, mm-mm. Yeah, and I think even when I was a student, I heard about how prayer had been taken. I don't remember prayers in schools. Um,
Yeah, I think the last time I remember any kind of prayer in the schools or allowed in school was actually in the '60s, and it had to be like the mid '60s. But slowly but surely they started taking it out as people, different beliefs actually rose up. Um, uh, there's a I don't know how far we want to venture from this, but there's a very good book, and I always recommend this. It's called The Boy Problem by Julia Grant.
okay,
Okay, where she actually illustrates the school system, American school system from 1850 to I think it's 1971, and she talks about why, because the Prussian school system wasn't nationwide. It was actually didn't come to the United States till the 1830s, and that was in New England. I think we called it the New England school system here, but it didn't spread to the rest of the country until the 1850s when we had a lot of immigrants come in. And because of the immigrants came over to actually work in the factories, and so when they had children, and if you're in the factories 12 to 13 hours a day, and the children aren't working, guess where they are? They're on the street, and it became such a problem, especially in bigger cities like New York, Boston, Philly, the large Chicago, the larger cities. The street children became a problem. What do you do with the kids between the hours of 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock? Okay, if the parents aren't at home? So, uh, according to Julia Grant, there's three things that the school system, public school system, especially the Prussian model that came in, was supposed to do. Was one, be a babysitter, get the kids off the street. Okay, at the time, and you've noticed that with COVID, right? Okay, the mommies and daddies can't go to work because there's no school system there to babysit the kids while they're not there. Okay, so number one is the babysitting system. Okay, child care. Number two, socialization. Third is education. Okay, in Prussia you didn't need that because most of the parents would work from home on farms or a small shop, so that wasn't as big a problem. Socialization and education were the two biggest things that in Germany that they wanted. When it came here, okay, child care was number one. Even today, the biggest child. I think you've heard me during my rants, right? Uh, During COVID, when they shut down the classes and kids had to be at home, there was going to be a problem because your biggest child care system in the United States is the public school system. And if the kids are at home, somebody's got to be there with them, or they're going to be running the streets, you know, doing whatever like they did in New York and Philly and Chicago and Boston. So the three biggest things about adopting it here, adopting this model, the standardized model, is because that's John Taylor Gatto. That's the problem that he had with the Prussian school system. It doesn't allow for individuality. Even I'm sure that even when you went to school, okay, you as an individual didn't matter as much. Okay, it's the teacher up front and the curriculum that they impose upon you. So they didn't like a Montessori school because I actually sent my daughter to a Montessori school. So they actually focus on the individual child a lot more. In the school system, especially when I was coming, and even now. Okay, a kid may get 7 minutes of individual instruction a day from his teacher if they're lucky. So the individual instruction in the individual in the Prussian school system in this school system doesn't matter as much as the group does, and that's the problem that he had with it.
Okay, so in other words, individual attention is not the most important thing,
No,
but also individual creativity.
yeah, can be suppressed. Yeah,
Okay, interesting. So it's kind of
yeah,
like a a cookie cutter
it is. It's a
type
fact.
thing.
It's a very standardized. Some people say a factory school system, which for mass production, okay, if you want to teach the masses, that's probably the way to go. Okay, because it has to be standardized. It can't, you can't take millions of kids and standardize to each kid. So, uh, um, especially at the cost that the relative cost that the school systems have, right? Um, Individual instruction is very difficult. It's very costly. So, if you want to send a kid to a private school, even as Thomas Sowell said, one of those charter schools. Okay, yeah, if you want to pay the money. If you want to pay the money for small class sizes, individual instructions, very good teachers, you'll get that. But how do you do that for the masses? How do you give free education to the masses at that expense?
Hmm.
And the Prussian school system is probably the model that makes the most sense. It's almost like uh, like uh, uh, the Henry Fordism of education. It's a big factory model. It's standardized, and each kid is on like an assembly line.
Okay. Now, I talk about money over here sometimes, and one of the books I've read, or one of
Hmm.
the books that most money people read, is the Rich Dad Poor Dad series. One of
Hmm.
the things he talks about is how there's no business training or there's little money training in the system. Does that have something to do with this? The fact that it's just more efficient to train workers
Yes.
than okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, that's what the Prussian school system was about. Was about training workers. You know,
and not
uh,
creative entrepreneurs.
entrepreneurs. Yeah. Those would either bubble to the top, and they would get grants. Somebody such as you, and like when you went to your technical school, you had to take a test to get in. Okay. For the 10 or 15% of the kids that do bubble up to the top, either they would be paid for by their parents, or uh, the top 10 or 15% will actually be paid for by the state. But the vast majority of people are workers,
Interesting.
and they get a basic education to be workers,
Okay.
which
Now,
which actually works because the United States is an advanced society, and without that school system, you wouldn't have the society that we live in. We're not. Um, you don't have a lot of PhDs, but the thing is, you have a lot of educated workers
okay.
compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah. All right. Then that leads us to we can get to this at the end, but this leads us to is the system producing today what's needed, or are the students coming out prepared for um, what's in the world today? But we'll get to that.
Hmm.
Uh, One of the more interesting, well, everything you say is interesting, Master Teacher, but
I'm following your lead, so I'm saying this is a very broad topic. So,
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. And if you guys have questions there in the chat,
Japan actually adopted the Prussian school system in 1820.
okay.
Yeah, you just look at Japan. Japan is even more cookie cutter because you're talking about people in Japan and their education system. They're even more about the group and less about the individual.
But
So
you said they opted out.
no, 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 no. They bought in.
They
They
bought
bought
in.
in.
Okay,
They
okay,
bought in. Yeah.
okay. All right. Let's see. So one of the more intriguing things that I've heard you say is that children are born for the state.
Yes.
And, I mean, that means that there's a bit of an illusion that in families that, I mean, you are creating a legacy, a genetic legacy,
Mm-hmm.
and your genes are going forward. But this also suggests that there's a larger agenda, um, in terms of, why the state needs children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's to go ahead and be productive workers and to generate, contribute to the GDP and to generate a
Yeah.
tax base.
To the whole society. It's not just workers. Okay. How do you get how do you get people to fit into a society? So even the bum on the street um, has to fit into society. How do they do that? How they socialize to fit into society? How do you fit a whole bunch of people to fit in together and cooperate together? Whether it's at work, at home, in the streets, obeying laws, all that kind of stuff they have to be socialized a certain way to fit into society. So being workers is just part of it, but being a citizen that fits into the whole society is another part of it.
Okay. All right. You know what? I'm still wrapping my mind around. I think of school in terms of academics, but I'm still wrapping my mind around the whole socialization
Hmm.
piece.
I mean, and that's what Gatto had a problem with, right? If you think about it, um, how do you train a worker, right? If you think about, um, I don't know. We see you're an academic, so you really don't punch a clock per se, right?
Well, actually, I'm a federal employee, so I
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Okay. The standard model is work, break, lunch, break, home, right? Okay. You go to school, right? It's go to school. It's your first recess, lunch, second recess, home, right? So you've been doing that since kindergarten for the most
Hmm.
part, right? Work, not work, but school, recess, lunch, recess, home, right? You go to work for 8 hours. It's work, break, lunch, break, home. You started at 5 and you do it until you retire. If you work a standard 8 hour workday, right? For the most part. I'm not, there are people that don't have a standardized schedule, but for the most part, 90% of people do that same model. Uh, Come to work, break, lunch, second break, home. Okay. School, recess, lunch, second recess, home. Same pattern. Nobody notices it, but it's that way. It's the same thing with line. Remember the bells? I don't know if you had bells when you were in school.
Yes.
Okay. Bell to go to school, bell to go to class, bell for recess. Okay. Bell to go back to back to class. Bell for lunch. Bell to go back to class. Bell for recess. Go to recess. Bell to go back to class, and the bell to get off and go home. So those bells are actually training you unconsciously in a pattern. That's socialization.
Okay.
If you think about it, but
Yeah.
most people don't notice it.
Yeah. And what's funny is, as you were saying that, I was thinking about, um, entrepreneurship and rich dad poor dad.
Hmm.
When I was doing my PhD,
Hmm.
I think, looking back, that might have been one of the adjustments, is that we were breaking that pattern.
Hmm.
We were there to learn to think creatively,
Hmm.
and also we were working after hours sometimes,
Hmm.
working on the weekends sometimes,
Hmm.
and that's something that my advisor had to break me out of. Was, this is not a 9 to 5.
Right.
This is not a, you come clocking your time, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know that, and
Which is
the
which
same thing with my postdoc advisor. Go ahead.
which is what rich people do. Okay, independent and rich people do. They don't have a schedule or a time or no, a lot of the amount of hours. It's time on task. Do I do it until the task is actually done? Okay, because they're getting you out of the framework of a standardized worker. that your school system actually trained into you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that in part answers the riddle that companies like Microsoft and Facebook are owned by guys who dropped out,
Mm-hmm.
and they're employing A students, degreed A students to run their
Mm-hmm.
companies.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Giyagami says, thank you for the $10 super chat. He says, the more advanced slash complex a society grows, the more uh,
Insectoid.
insectoid it becomes. Okay, I had to read that a second time. Such insectoid societies like macroorganisms are sectorially specialized. They're formatted for
Their intended
intended
purpose.
purposes.
I mean, if you try to put 300 million people together without doing that, and see what you get. People think that the structures are destructive, but the thing is, if you look at the societies that actually do employ that, including China now, okay, including China now, where are they compared to everybody else? You pick your poison. If you want individuals running all over the place, doing what they do, and not socializing them, not directing them to a purpose, um, look at the countries that do that, and where are they? And would you want to live there? Because I see you give them those Canadian dollars. You don't live in one of those countries.
Okay. So what you're saying is the larger your population grows, you
Hmm.
need to
Organize it.
organize it.
Hmm. And how do
Okay.
you do it? And how do you do it? Where do you start and how do you do it? You don't start with adults. You start with children. And that's what I can't remember who said it. It was a priest that said, "Give me the child at 7, and I give you the man." Because kindergarten under Frederick the First started at 5 years old. That's where it started. 5 years old. Basically, the instruction was go from kindergarten to seventh grade, which is now standard all over the world. It's up to eighth grade, but it's standardized all over the world from even where from 5 or 6 years old to seventh grade, which is like 12 or 13, which is puberty. And most people start working at children start working or considered working adults at 13, 14 years old. It's changed because of high school or what they call gymnasium because you need a more complex education for a more complex society. Um, but uh, uh, if you look how the world's actually standardized all over the world, basically the reason that the Prussian school model has been adopted because it is actually effective and successful. There's a reason for it. I was actually talking to I was actually in Guatemala. We're actually talking about the school systems, right? And we're actually talking about Ghana and Nkrumah. Uh, and when Nkrumah came from the United States and he went to Ghana and set up the school system, he actually used the Prussian model, the same thing. In other words, uh, he wanted to actually bring all just like the German tribes, he actually wanted to bring all the tribes in Ghana together but to build a national identity. So what he did was set up the Prussian school system and actually had the children bus from one village to the opposite village. So in other words, uh, they got their own village identity from their parents. But the thing is, they got their socialization as far as being a Ghanaian from teachers from an opposite village or opposite tribe. So in other words, by blending the two, they couldn't see themselves as one particular tribe because they're actually born and socialized at home from one tribe, but actually taught and socialized by another tribe. So they had to slowly but surely gather what they call a national identity instead of a tribal identity.
Okay. Interesting. So I know Dr. Thomas Sowell isn't one of your favorite scholars or intellectuals,
No, he's not.
uh,
But yeah.
but but the first book I read of his was Inside American Education, and in
Hmm.
there he stated this gets to socialization. He stated
Hmm.
that, or he was of the opinion that American schools need to get back to um, teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic as opposed to social dogma. And let's see, I read this in graduate school, which was in the first decade of this century. So that book was probably a few years old at that point. So that means that at some point we did get away from
You, you,
um,
it,
teaching
it,
just reading, writing, and arithmetic to
social
where we
dogma,
are now.
social dogma was always part of the school system. If you read Fichte, Fichte says that in 1812 that social dogma is part of the school system, and it was part of the school system, the Prussian school system in 1765. Social dogma has always been part of the school system. You can't separate the two.
Okay.
You know, like I said, pledge allegiance to the flag. That's social dogma.
Okay.
Allegiance to the state, social dogma. How you the history books that you teach, because you learn history in school, right? Social studies, history. Okay, history is social dogma. Uh, George Washington chopping down a cherry tree. Okay. It's not recognized leftist social dogma like they tried to inculcate now, but it basically you gave the feminists control of the school system in 1972, so it's different social dogma, but it's social dogma none the same. That's why it's so effective.
Okay. I want to come back to that.
Hmm.
Let's see. Well, yeah, my last question was um, in modern times, what are the dangers with such a system? You mentioned that in the 70s it was handed over to feminism.
Hmm.
Was that done by voting in certain officials? Did presidents
Yeah.
appoint certain individuals to the cabinet? Or
Title Nine. Yeah, Title Nine handed over the school system to feminism, and you had mostly female teachers anyway, but entitled them to actually change the curriculum to be more inclusive and be more um, how can I say have more equity built into it, be more female leaning. Okay, you don't have to be upfront about it. If you lean that way and make actually build um, the educational model on a particular kind of student, like in the Prussia, the model was the Prussian officer. Okay, moral, upright, very ordered, neat, that kind of stuff. That was the model student for the Prussian system, and that's the model they actually taught to. Okay, in 1972, the model student was a white female. So all your curriculum started leaning toward more feminism, more female leaning, more female centric. The how you taught kids was uh, uh, actually more leaning toward how females learn. Like boys have to be more active. They need more kinetic activities. They need more logic based activities and less about how can I say it? Less about feelings and less about uh, uh, moral interactions. Boys are basically they want to know problem problem solution oriented, right? And less about uh, the moral implications of what said actions are going to be. Okay, even the way you teach math. Okay, I noticed my grandson how they teach math. Okay, it's less about rote. It's less about memorization of timetables and stuff like that. It's more about uh, uh, socializing through even word problems, right? If Sally made cupcakes and she was the boss and she made 20 cupcakes, blah blah blah. The word problems in themselves is socialization. You actually making Sally the boss, or Sally being the teacher, or something like that. All that stuff is socialization. It's subtle, but if you do it over time, uh, people start thinking that way. So how you teach boys and how you teach girls are different, and they noticed that back in I think it's 1917 or 1916 where the Atlantic uh, had articles back then about the feminization of boys back in 1916 because the curriculum was actually slanted toward girls. And how do you change the curriculum so it's more uh, male centric, like the addition of sports, especially sports, P, and all that kind of stuff to give boys a chance to burn off that energy, was actually introduced so you can get a more male dominated curriculum, and actually start teaching the way boys actually learn, and that they know that. And what they slowly started doing in 1970, started stripping things away, stripping away shop, less PE, less activity centric, less logic or outcome based kind of learning. The way you teach math is not is ordered and rote. It's more about word problems and stuff like that. Whereas when I came up, you really you got very few word problems till you got to middle school. Okay, you didn't get a whole lot of word problems in kindergarten, in first and second grade. Okay, where you have some, but very little, very little. It was more about learning the basics, and now they've kind of feminized that. I think that's what I think that what Soul was trying to say about socialization. Um, you actually want a more male centric or male modeled way of actually learning, and neither is wrong. The thing is that the way they teach now is more centered toward girls. That's how come girls do better in school and college now. Is because the way the system is actually slanted toward the way they learn. Whereas if you see an if you see an all boys system, if they're all black boys that are poor, basically it's a male centered learning the way a male mind works, and all the boys actually graduate, and 98% of them actually go to college. And why is that? Because you actually give them a system that works the way their mind works.
Okay, let me quote this pop up. I want to thank Mr. Heat for the super chat. He says,
Thank you,
"Sup,
Mr. Heat.
Doc?" Thank you, Mr. Heat. Um, okay.
It's a big
So,
subject.
so yeah, yeah. So I'm trying to think back to my first or second grade. It was so long ago. Um, See, so they're getting more word problems in those grades, and
Hmm.
it used to be just more. When you say rote, you mean
Okay,
just down to the straight principles.
you, yeah, basically, okay, say you get addition problems, right? You get a big sheet, okay? They teach you the basics, and you get this big sheet of addition problems. You're just supposed to work through them, right?
Hmm.
Same thing with times table. That's where you learn, right? You learn the principles, you learn memorize a little bit, and basically it gives you this big sheet. You learn it by rote. You actually going through all these different problems, right? One after the other. They give you a big sheet. You flip it over, you go to the next big sheet. That's just math. That was math for you,
Yes.
okay? Reading for you is basically reading. Okay, um, even when reading is basically socialization by the books that you pick, but um, it was more based on mother, father, family, that kind of stuff, basically, which is socialization. But also they socialize you through the stuff that you read. But basically, it was way more boy centered, or way more empirically, actually empirically learned. Um, Whereas I noticed with my grandson when he was in like second grade, okay, yeah, you learn the principles, okay, you learn how to add, subtract, add and subtract, but basically there was way more word problems, way more words in the math that you use. So there's way more words and all the stuff that you actually encounter in basically in your day, is in your curriculum, and using a whole bunch of words is a feminine based way of learning. Okay, men use less words. Men get to the point.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, and so it's actually slanted toward the way a woman actually works. Actually, uh, is actually trained, which also leads to why there's less women people in STEM.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
We,
not
we- you
as
know,
efficient.
as you were saying that, I was also thinking that puts a higher doesn't that put a higher premium on reading at an early age?
Hmm.
So the boy has to be able to read the words
Read the words, yeah, and
and
interpret and
yeah.
interpret the words.
So you kind of know where I'm going with that.
Yeah,
The drum that Dr. Johnson is beating about the reading level.
yeah.
So if those boys can't, I mean, ideally they'd be able to. spell and know their letters at an early age. But if they can't do that, then I
Yeah.
imagine it'd be harder to learn math.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going to read through some of these comments. Charles Irby says, I remember they took shop out of my middle school in the late 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting a little bit of that in elementary school. I always looked forward to shop class. They had cooking classes for the girls. Yep. Home ec, I think that went away.
Yeah, the home ec, and there's a very good book called More Than Title IX where they actually talk about them slowly but surely changing the model, and actually not only tamping down. Well, basically, women don't take shop. Okay, women don't need shop. It's a female centered curriculum, and they actually encourage more boys to take home ec.
Yeah. Well, it almost seems like the overarching intention is to make everybody the same.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I want to thank MLR for the Cash App. Much appreciated. So Master Teacher, I think that was my last. Well, I'll squeeze this in, and I have one more. So for your grandson, hypothetically,
Hmm.
Black Urus talked about the need for boys and girls to be separate, and we know how that's been received.
Hmm.
Um, but did this school system were there separate schools in this system, or and how do you feel about separating boys from girls at least until what? When's the ideal time to put them back together? Is it in college or is it in high school?
I think if you're gonna bring them together when they're early on, I think from maybe up till maybe fourth or fifth grade, that's fine. But I think after that, I think they need to be separated because that's when you notice the separation between boys and girls as far as grades are concerned. Right around fifth or sixth grade, then they start to diverge. So I think that's when they need to be separated. If not, I think elementary is fine, but I think if you want them to be, if you're going to bring them together, I think it should be early, and then I think they should be separated at in middle school, because in most native lands, basically they separate the boys and girls at 7 or 8 years old, and you have a boys learning, you have girls learning. If you're not going to do that socially, I think you should do it academically. And if at the very least, if you're going to separate them, I think at the very least separate them in high school because that seems to be the most important from ninth to the last 4 years of school.
Yeah.
It seems to
Okay.
make the biggest impact. I would say middle school on. You should separate boys from girls.
Okay. I can personally vouch for that being a major distraction for me in high school.
Hmm.
And I think that I mean, not that I like looking and you know those kinds of things, but
Yeah,
if that social acceptance, peer acceptance component
yeah,
was eliminated, I probably would have been more focused
yeah. But even the
high
school that
school
you went,
level.
but you went to a tech school, so
Yes.
what a tech school is probably more male dominated as far as the style of learning and curriculum that you take.
Well, Master Teacher, that was the early 1990s.
Hmm.
So I'll have to think about that.
it, STEM is more male dominated arena.
Yeah,
So, and it's more empirical. It's less about social norms and that kind of indoctrination because you're trying to train a group of people for a certain thing. And STEM is more logical. It's way more empirical logically than it is, say, like a basic high school. So you're probably in a more male. I don't know how many girls actually went to your school, but I'm sure
yeah.
is pretty heavily male dominated.
Well, I just recall that there was a significant female population in the student body.
Hmm.
That's what I remember. So I don't um that's what I recall. So I don't remember the curriculum, and I'll probably sit down afterwards and think about this, but I don't remember the
Hmm.
curriculum being as rote and as militaristic as as it could have been.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah.
Um, okay. I see Black Guru's there in the chat right now. Okay, so we're right at an hour. So Master Teacher, thank you. One of the biggest takeaways from this is that
Mm.
this system has there's a huge socialization component,
Oh yeah, always has been. Yeah, even
and
from the beginning.
even from the beginning. And
Mm.
so, you know what? I don't want to get into too much. Uh, I want to leave this up. In other words, but
Oh.
I think what we're
Uh,
seeing, and one of the things that's concerning for a lot of people is that component
oh
is
yeah, yeah,
running
yeah.
unchecked
And
today, and there are people at the controls who are
yeah,
controlling
yeah,
what that socialization is.
and that's the problem. It's a machine, right? You know, it was designed to be a machine. And the thing is, when you put people in control of the machine, okay, you control the output, and that's the problem. And that's why you have to be really careful about what goes into the machine that you put into kids, because you're doing that early, and that's the product that you're actually going to get out on the other side. That's how come even the feminists with Title IX, okay, um, they had planned to actually take over the K through 12 school system. Okay, a lot of people in Congress thought they were actually wanted women in sports, and actually to do it at the college level. Okay, but all along they actually planned to actually implement Title IX from K through 12, because that's where the kids are actually trained, and they knew that, and they knew that they actually did their homework, and basically the Congress got sloppy, and you led feminists into the K through 12, and we see what comes out on the other side. 40 years later,
Yeah,
you see what comes out. And the thing is, if you allow certain things to go into your school system, into the machine, what kind of products are going to come out on the other side?
yeah. So I need to put this disclaimer out there because I want to leave this up.
Oh, well, we're not
Yeah,
saying we're not saying any particular
yeah,
agenda. We're not going to say it is. But the thing is, you have to be careful what kind of instruction is implemented into the machine,
yeah,
because and be careful, because even now, 40 years later, right? Um, Women are actually taught to be equal, and be providers, and be equal to men, and that's what they wanted, be in control of their families. And they come out the other side and find out biology does count, and women do not want to be um, uh, breadwinners, in control of their families. They actually want men to do it. But the thing is, okay, you set up a system 40 years ago to have more breadwinning women, family leading women, and provider males. So now you have a system where you do have provider male, supportive males, and provider women, but women don't want to provide. Now the system's all screwed up, because you just can't create these people out of nothing. You can't just re-socialize people that are adults. It doesn't work that way. You've already put the basic software into these kids, and how do you get it out? How do you retrain men and women to actually do something that you've taught them over the period of 15, 20 years? It doesn't work that way.
yeah. So we're approaching this from a scholarly perspective. This is not
Uh-huh.
it's not meant to demonize anyone.
No.
But the question is someone living in this society,
Hmm.
it's like being on the Titanic. It's like, okay, is this ship looks like it's gonna slam into an iceberg? Is
Right.
anyone watching? Is anyone paying attention?
Right.
That's the whole point of a discussion like this. And if so, a lot of people aren't thinking about this, they're just kind of wandering through and not paying attention. And much of our society is distracted with social media and other
Hmm.
things. And
Right.
um,
Yeah.
so,
The thing about about the system itself is, the system was invented in the 1760s, and it's still here.
yeah,
And the environment and technology has advanced. Is it time to change the system into something else?
okay,
And is it time to adopt a system that's um, uh, probably more updated, and probably more suited for the environment that we're in? And that's the issue we have. We have a 250-year-old school system, which is revolutionary for its time, but that's 250 years ago. It's not revolutionary anymore. And all the problems that are actually embedded in it that could be ameliorated then, can they still be doing the same thing, right? Can you is there a way to actually give a child individual instruction? through AI, through computer learning, through off-site learning, through recorded programs, that kind of stuff. And that's what COVID kind of tested. How much can you offload to automated systems versus in-person instruction? And that's the question. That's the conversation that we're having now. How can you update the system or change the system to another model? Because it is old. It was built for another time.
Okay. I have three super chats. Master Teacher, I'm going to
Go
ask
ahead.
one more question. Then, if you feel like hanging out for a short and
Sure.
entertaining some more guests, I'll open it up. So Snuggle says, I appreciate the amount of people that are over here to listen to intelligence being disseminated. Maybe there's still hope for humanity. Yeah, guys, I realize this isn't the this is a scholarly discussion. This isn't the
Yeah, well, you're the
uh,
scholar, so
uh,
so
what's wrong
I'm
with
just I'm
relationship?
I'm
Women are eating. Yeah.
I'm just a regular guy. You're the
Oh,
scholar.
please. That's a teacher. You're a Rhodes scholar in your own right. Um, Drew says solid discussions this weekend, Doctor. Thank you. I think you're referring to this one and my Friday discussion with
Oh
Nicole
yeah, well,
over on my
yes.
science channel. Got to have her back a few more times, sooner than later. Black Uru Strike says to get the girls to where they want them to be, they have to sacrifice the boys. Black boys were the initial sacrifice. Now white boys are falling too.
That's true.
Interesting. Let's see. And Gavin St. Clair says Master BGS would implementing the trivium as early as the first grade, then the quadrivium at sixth, or some other grade that you would suggest. Okay, so
You,
I'm going to learn
you,
something new here. I'm not sure what trivium and quadrivium are.
you could esoteric learning is was normally done over time with with people that are educated in esoteric learning, like priests, uh, like the Catholic school system. But thing is that to do that is very expensive. Montessori schools do that um, a bit. In fact, I had my daughter. This got to be 30 years ago. How's my daughter now? She's 33. Yeah, 30 years ago. This was back in the 90s. Okay, and at the time it cost me $700, $750 a month to send her to a Montessori school. Excellent school. They actually followed that model, and this was preschool. Cost me $700 a month. So it's expensive if you want that kind of learning. That's for if you could implement it, you find a way to implement it at cost, that's fine. But the thing is, trying to implement that kind of level of instruction by trained people cost. Those kind of people do cost. They don't. They're not around. They're not. They don't. They're not lying around. Okay. You can't just kind of go to the corner and pick one of these teachers up and put them in a classroom. Okay. It's very specific instruction. So no, you probably couldn't. Not at cost.
Okay. Uh, Last question. Then I'll throw the link in the chat for anyone who wants to come up and say a few words about this topic. Uh, so, Master Teacher, you talk about your grandson
Hmm.
often. Um, are there certain ways you're approaching his education? It sounds like you're involved, um, really hands on with his education. Are there extra things you have to do once he comes home? Are there things that in the school that you see that you don't like? Can you say a few words about how you're handling him for people who have black boys?
Um, sometimes it's not so much the curriculum, but it's the way that it's taught,
Hmm.
and uh, and sometimes I know you've taught because you're a PhD. At some point, you had to teach, or
Hmm.
and you see the curriculum, and sometimes it doesn't work the way as efficiently as it could. You have to change it. Okay, toss that out. Okay, I see the method they're trying to go for. Toss that out. We're gonna do it this way because this is more efficient. I do a lot of that. I take the curriculum. Just like I think it was like maybe a week ago, had to learn um, he had to learn the states and the state's capital, and so they give him a list of states and the state's capital. You learn it by rote. So instead of that, I just pull out the tablet. I pull up a map, and I said, okay, now write the states and the state's capital. So not only do you learn the state capital, but also learn the shape of the states and where they're at in relationship to other states. Okay, as a whole map. You do that, it's more efficient. So you have to kind of modify the way they teach. Okay, you have to modify what he reads because they say read for 20 minutes. Well, you had a kid read. You can have them read a comic book or like I had my son reading The Wizard of Oz. It's like a seventh grade book, but he's 9. The thing is, you can modify it. What he learns. How does he learn multiplication tables? Okay, um, you could have him do it the way they did it, which is actually filling in a chart um, with a multiplication uh, with a multiplication grid, or I have them go through flashcards and I have them listen to Schoolhouse Rock. Okay, memorize it through learning and music, which actually uh, uh, have him learn through a different pathway. Okay, but with hearing and with visuals and with rhythm. So in addition to the rote, in addition to the flashcards, so you modify it a little bit. So that's how I do it.
Okay. Everyone, the link is here. If anyone wants to come up and uh, say something or join the discussion. Let's see. Tara 2002 says facts at Black Uber strikes. I see it in high school and college every day. Female centered at the expense of male students and male teachers.
They did that on purpose.
Well, Dr. Robert Glover talked about that in No More Mr. Nice Guy. That
hmm
the fact that most of the teachers are female.
hmm
So boys are socialized to defer to female authority and
Right.
female leadership at an
Yeah.
early
And then you see bleed out into social media, and actually um, entertainment, right? Like you see all the what I call the female badass, right? She's an agent or she's a warrior, and she's flipping over 200-pound guys, and she's an expert with weapons and stuff like that. So she had the rise of the female badass. Okay, so in other words, women can lead, women can fight. Women are taking the hero, are taking the hero role in replacing men. You see a lot of gender swapping. So they want women to actually see themselves as leaders, as heroes, as fighters and protectors. Okay, which is hasn't been their traditional role. That's further actually socializing people. It starts with the Disney princess in kindergarten, and it goes all the way through into media now. You can't escape it.
Yeah. Well, Charles is there in the chat. He's talked about this. We have a lot of Black Widows and Captain Marvels and
hmm
beating up,
Yeah, yeah,
big bad guys. And
yeah. I was going through Netflix, and man, I saw like 15 different shows that emphasize what I call the female badass. So you have you have a 50-year-old Queen Latifah that's like 200 pounds. She's playing a secret agent beating up people. So and jumping
okay.
over stairs and so like
Yeah,
that. So
yeah. We've been joined by Mr. Heat. Mr. Heat, I'm going to give it to you guys. I want to leave this up, so keep it
keep it
scholarly
clean.
as much as possible. And Mr. Heat, I'm going to give it to you.
Definitely. Thank you, gentlemen. Just two questions. I guess the first one is I know we're somewhere in the fourth industrial revolution. I don't know how far. I like to tell myself it's shin deep. We're shin deep right now, but I don't exactly know how far in it we are. Um,
We just have our toes in it right now.
wow, that's
Oh,
wow. It,
you had to read the Singularity is Near by Kurzweil. We haven't even started yet. We just got our
if we're
toes in it.
only toes in, no, there's a little bit of fear in me. But anyway, my next question was,
You haven't heard my live streams where we actually go deep into it, but go ahead.
yeah, no, I've been in Chicago for the past couple of months. I joined the Navy. Needed a security clearance. This was the quickest, fastest way of getting one. But anyway,
hmm
um, so my second question was with the education system as it was or as it has been for the past 40 years, do you
Okay.
see,
Well, really
um,
200, really 200, but yeah. Oh,
well,
oh, talking about
yeah,
40, talking about feminists, right?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
okay, okay.
without
50
saying any
years.
other stuff,
Yeah, yeah, 50 years.
how, how do you think, um, I guess that favors anyone, um, with regards to the fourth industrial revolution? Seeing at where it's going to take us, um, do you think that what they've taught us in the last 40 years will help us?
In the last 40 years, I would say the first half, no. The second half, where they actually tried to go to the Common Core, they tried. The thing is, will it be successful? And so far, it hasn't been. So, no. They're going to have
Yeah,
to rejigger it again because it didn't work.
yeah, I was thinking about that and just couldn't make any sense of it. And again, me thinking we're shin deep and we're only toes in,
Hmm.
that's actually a little scary.
Yeah, you're using an antiquated structure, which is the Prussian school system. It's actually antiquated. They should have gone to something more updated, maybe 15 years ago or so. Go back and look up the flipped classroom model. That's what we should have started to go to transition to 15 years ago. They tried to actually do some of that under COVID, but the thing is, the kids are not socialized to learn that way yet. So we should have transitioned to a more updated system 15 years ago. But the thing is, a lot of teachers actually wedded to the old Prussian school system, the old Prussian classroom model. So it's going to take a minute.
Gotcha. What did you say the name was again? The flip
Okay,
something?
look at the flipped 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 classroom. Yes, there's tons of videos on it going back to like 2006 or 7. In
I have to
fact, I
check
was
that out.
advocating for it back then, and a lot of people were actually resistant to it. But the thing is, as soon as COVID hit, you had to use it because that's the only model that you had. And what I noticed is that the kids are not socialized to learn that way yet because it wasn't introduced. You can't just rush something when kids are socialized for one model and expect it to work automatically. It doesn't. So it's going to take time, but eventually you're actually going to go to the model that they actually started using in during COVID. They're actually going to start implementing more AI, more offsite learning, more um, um, uh, what do you call it? Over the air Zoom classes, Zoom tutors, that kind of stuff. So it's a mismatch, but the thing it has to be organized in a certain way. It's there, the pieces are there. It has to be organized, and the kids have to be socialized to actually learn that way. So it's going to take a minute.
Yeah, that's it's actually very fascinating because I already well, what I saw was,
Hmm.
I mean, I've been in school almost all my life. Um, what the kids are doing now, or what they're forced to do now due to COVID,
Yes.
is what we eventually got to around, I don't know, in college, where it
Hmm.
was less of a teacher-led class when more of you need to do this by yourself and
Hmm.
use the systems we provide to you to learn what you need to learn.
Yeah. Well, that as an adult's fine, but as a kid, why flipped classroom works is because 4 hours is actually online and asynchronous, and then when you get to the classroom, then you go over the same lessons where you get the benefits of both. Because you can't do that with a young kid; they can't learn them by themselves completely online. It doesn't work very well. So you need a combination of the two,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
I, so
No.
I stepped away for a second.
Hmm.
So BGS, are you this? You call it a flipped?
Yeah, if you look it up, it's called flipped classroom. That's just a name they use. But in other words, it flips. In other words, there's a component as far as education, right? It's up front where the lecture is, where the teacher gives the lecture and gives the basic outline of what the components of learning is, right? That's recorded and that's learned at home. And when you get to class, that's where the in-person instruction actually happens, right? In other words, we're not working on the lectures has already been given. We're actually working on the individual person and how you learn and how do you solve problems and stuff like almost like a study session when you actually get to class. So it's less about lecture and going to the chalkboard that's already been given asynchronously away online. And when you get to the class, it's more about in-person instruction, hands-on instruction by the teacher.
Hmm?
Okay.
That's
Master.
flipped.
Okay. Thank you, Master Teacher. I have a super chat which is
Hmm.
addressed to you. I don't know why we didn't cover this earlier, but this is huge because when I was in high school, I remember my mother and some of the black parents got upset because they didn't feel like Black history was being covered enough
Hmm.
in the curriculum, and maybe that might have been Black History Month. But this question says, at BGS, as time goes on, do you believe people will start rewriting history in the school systems? Slaves equal indentured servants. Thank you for the
Yes,
$5
they
super
will.
chat, Aisa.
Yes, they will. They always have, depending on how far the generations are away from the initial event. Yeah, they will. Eventually, you will be. If we don't keep insisting that we keep the truth alive, they will. They always have.
Okay, so in other words, the they will attempt to decrease the seriousness of it.
Or they'll change the narrative altogether.
Yeah.
Like how many people believe George Washington actually chopped down a cherry tree, or Abe Lincoln never told a lie.
Okay.
Those are myths, but we believe them because that's what we're taught in school.
So everyone,
You
the
know,
the StreamYard link is there if you want to come up. I'm going to keep this going for just a little bit longer. Mr. Heat, before you go, I want to ask Master Teacher a question. So, Master Teacher, so in terms of history, in
Hmm.
terms of your own anyone's ethnic group, in your opinion, whose responsibility is it to teach that? Is it your family, your communities, or is it the school system's responsibility to teach all aspects of history?
They can't teach all aspects of history, so basically, it is incumbent upon your family and your community to actually teach it. That's
I
what
agree.
Saturday schools are actually there for.
And my postdoctoral lab was Chinese. There was
Mm.
me and one other American in there, and my postdoctoral advisor, I remember he told me and his wife told me that they had their kids going to a Chinese school on
Hmm.
Saturdays.
Hmm.
So which I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised. But I said, okay, they must want their children because their children were first generation Americans, so they were being
Right.
socialized
Yeah.
in pop culture and everything. So I said, okay, they want their children to understand and know their Chinese culture.
Right. Yeah. The Saturday school is more about socialization and less about actually learning the dotting the i's and crossing the t's.
Hmm. Mr. Heath, did you have another question?
no, someone mentioned something about being taught about slavery or whatever. And I just
Hmm.
find it fascinating that me growing up in the islands, I can honestly tell you that the most I know about slavery was it happened. Don't get me wrong, there was other information, but um, like a lot of what BGS put out, the information he would find and stuff, had no idea it was that deep. Like I didn't know breeding was a thing.
Hmm. No, no,
Um,
most people don't.
right. So they don't teach that in school, but
No,
still,
they
I
don't.
mean, most most American Black people know a lot more about that stuff than I do growing up in the islands.
Yeah,
So
the reason is because we had an extended serfdom, which is called Jim Crow. It had a bigger effect on us because black folks are actually tied to money. You know, our slavery and actually Jim Crow is actually tied to money because the South actually produced like 80% of your goods and your money at the time. They couldn't just release you. America would have fallen apart. So but that's what they don't tell you. But they can't tell you because that kind of learning is actually for the elite, not for the peasants. You get a peasant education,
right,
a basic peasant education, like most schools around the world, man. If you make it to the sixth grade, you're good. Okay, that's education. Okay,
that's
for
true.
third world. So basically, education for higher than that is actually for the elites.
That's true. Um, Another interesting thing that differed for me back home versus
Hmm.
here
Hmm.
was when I learned how it's considered discrimination to separate children in classroom based on their intellect and their ability to learn and perform, I guess. Like,
Yeah, okay, they're trying to. Okay, that was a battle even back then with what Victor was actually talking about, right? How do you balance? How do you bring together the elites versus the lower class, the peasants? Okay, where's the line? Okay, it's so do you separate all the brighter kids and leave the washed out kids or the basic kids someplace else, or make an elite buffer class, or do you kind of blend them in to give them the advantages of both? Do you teach them the same? Um, and they've America has done that. We don't think they have, but they've already done that. Um, is it supposed to be illegal? It's supposed to be discrimination. It's supposed to be, according to the liberal society that we're supposed to live in, but they do it anyway, right? If you take the CLEP test, which is an IQ test, basically they separate you out. Dr. Dunbar went to a separate high school he had to test for. Okay, that's separating out education. They still do it. They don't do it as blatantly as some other cultures, but they still do it.
gotcha. You know, ours was pretty in our face. You know, you know who was smart and who was, I guess, considered dumb,
Yeah.
and I guess no one was teased according to it. It just was what it was. Um, there was six different forms or grades, or however you would put it.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, when we went by the time we went to high school, which was our seventh grade, you
Mm-hmm.
guys would call it here. There was 1A1 to 1A6. So it was 1A1, 1A2, 1A3, 1A4, 1A5, 1A6. And 1A1 would be considered the best and brightest of the brights. 1A2 would be a little less than those ones. And
Okay.
1A6 would be considered people who had trouble learning, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they had different teachers, they had a different homeroom, and that's that. So and it went up to 1A1, 2A1, 3A1, 4A1, 5A1,
Mm-hmm.
and then 6A1 would be pre-college.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you could be in, let's say, 1A6 and did so
Mm-hmm.
well, where when you went to second form, you would go to 2A5. If you
Yeah.
did well, you would go to 3A4, and blah, you could work your way out.
Yeah. You can do in a smaller population. You can do that, but if you do in a larger population, there's going to be issues. Okay, because you're going to cause class separation that can actually go from strikes to violence. Okay. You actually want to mold all these people into one singular group if you can.
So again, another fascinating thing about that,
Mm-hmm.
um, coming here to America, I
Mm-hmm.
struggled in school because again, I was matched with everybody
Right.
who was considered smart, dumb, blah blah blah, whatever.
Right.
And what I saw a lot of times was the people who couldn't learn according to the school curriculum just became
Mm-hmm.
distractions.
Mm-hmm.
So they were even distracting the people who were focused and wanted to do their best and get out.
Okay.
And I think the separation actually sort of prevented that. I'm not saying it was right or whatever. I think whatever works for a culture works for that culture.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw the distraction.
Yeah.
Another place I saw it when I left boot camp and came to my training here. Um, I was placed with only people in my field.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an electronics technician,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember one day sitting on thinking to myself, "Holy crap! Why am I not frustrated with these people who I'm here with?" And it was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
these people are they think the same. Well, not so much the same way as I do, but they're almost in the same category as me."
Yeah. Okay, but then what did I say at the very beginning? What's the main purpose of the educational system in America? What are three things?
I don't even know if I was there
Okay,
when you mentioned that.
okay. One first is babysitting. Okay, first is babysitting. First is childcare. In other words, giving the kids a place to go while the parents are at work. That's number one. Number two is socialization. Okay, how do you get people on one accord to think the same way, be socialized the same way with as a whole group? Okay,
Makes sense. Makes
and the
sense.
third thing is education. Okay, what you're talking about is it actually focusing on education. Well, the public school system is not meant for the last part first. Child care, socialization first, and then education third while they're there.
So
because
Yeah.
fine.
you're supposed to bind the group together as one, not separate them. What you talk about is separating them.
So I want to interject something. Gavin Sinclair, I see you trying to come in. I'm seeing that your device is not connected, so I can't bring you up.
You
So
got to go out and come back in.
there's something technical happening on your end.
Hmm.
Okay, so Mr. Heat, go ahead.
I don't remember what I was saying. You guys have it.
You were talking about how it seems like the group dynamic,
Hmm.
the effort to make a homogenous group is taking away
Hmm.
from
Learning. Yeah, it does.
individuals ascending.
Yeah, it
Right. So
does.
and if right, if that is the case, BGS is absolutely 100% true because that's what it is. The people needing to learn, I guess, isn't the first objective or goal.
No, it is. It's not. Not in this school system. No.
Right.
The public school system.
Yeah.
But if you went into a private,
Yeah,
that's
that's a
something
different
different.
story. And they'll actually test to keep certain people out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Again, we did that too. So
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah. If you want to
Okay.
separate people and be more efficient that way, yeah, you would do that. But the thing is, you would actually lower your cohesion as far as the population. As a leader of the country, you want as much cohesion as possible.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to give it to Gavin. Gavin, welcome.
Gavin, are you? Can you hear us? We can barely
Gavin,
hear you.
Gavin, are you there?
He's having a problem with his mic.
Okay. Well, you might want to fix your mic or go out and come back in. You're here, so you're able to connect this time. Okay. I'm going to read a couple comments here from the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Faber says, so if they change the history of slavery,
Mm-hmm.
how will they explain away the continued social status of blacks in America? How it gets bred away?
It's already been started breeding away. They're actually going to mash you in with people of color. They're going to eliminate what we call the Negro class altogether. So when that goes, the history of slavery probably will go with it. You were never
Okay.
meant to be a separate class in the first place.
Okay, Gavin, can you want to try to talk again? I hear a whisper. I don't know if that's coming from you.
Yeah, he's having a problem with his mic.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to read some more comments from the chat. Gavin, if we can hear, if you fix it, I'll give you some time to say what you have to say. Let's see. Valeria says smartest kids are in grade A, second B, and so forth.
Oh, where he is, Baleri's, I think, is in Nigeria.
Okay. For example, Diaspora L says, for example, what were the intention of both the authors in institutions? Science and math are different. It's objective formulas and processes to achieve a certain outcome, or not so much if slavery is taught, but how it's being taught. Okay, Gavin, I see you back. I'm going to bring you up one more time.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Gavin, can you hear us? Nah, he's having a problem with his mic.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go do a few more comments here. Tara 2002 says things are not taught. Breeding farms, meritorious manumission, slave patrols, buck breeding, white women, slave owners, and their abuse of slaves, revolts, rebellions, Haitian Revolution, fragment.
Then I also saw, okay, there's something recently that I learned that's not being taught. Why the Civil War is actually taught, actually fought, It wasn't fought over slavery; it was actually fought over money. How much money slaves actually generated. Uh, Capitalism was actually based on slavery. They don't want to teach that because that's the negative side of capitalism. So they're not going to teach that. They're not going to be honest about it. That's something they have to learn outside of the formal education. Education is more about indoctrination and socialization than it is about education. If you don't understand that, you don't understand public education, especially the Prussian school system. So expect them to actually teach the truth, the whole truth, without coloring it. No society actually does that. Go to China and try to learn uncomfortable truths in China, or Japan, or Germany, or England, or any place else.
As you were saying that, I was thinking about Dr. Claude Anderson. He's been trying to get his books into the school systems for a while, but
Mm,
they don't want his books in there.
no, no, he's going to raise too many uncomfortable questions.
Yeah. And so those who control the narrative, those who control the history,
Yeah,
that's a lot of power.
yeah,
That's a lot of power.
yeah. Even at the college level, they filter what comes in and what goes what the kids actually learn. So even at the even postdoc, they filter what comes in because I'm having issues with certain things now with PhDs about worldview and certain information. We're actually going back and forth over, even though the empirically it's very sound. Like even something like the Monahan report, right? Big fight over that. Even though empirically what Monahan actually said was actually probably like 90% correct, even though it was just internal memo. But the thing is that the fight over it and the fight against it, even amongst the PhDs that are supposed to be learned, it's actually filtered. So any kind of education, any kind of indoctrination, any kind of information is always filtered. I don't care what level. Even amongst like the C word, C19, right? Okay, that information is being filtered and colored and fought over, even amongst people at Dr. Dunbar's level. Okay, it's all so it doesn't matter. Okay, if we complain about slavery and what they teach high school kids or elementary school kids, which is supposed to be filtered and colored and all that kind of stuff. That's all the way up the chain, even to the professional level, where it's filtered and colored. Information is actually massaged and argued over it. And what's actually filtered out to the public is completely different than what's behind the wall. And we're going through that now. C19 is just one example. It's a big example, but thing that shows you how much difference there is between empirical data and what's colored and what is actually reported out into the public. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
we're not going to talk about it that much, but the
Yeah.
doctors
Yeah.
dealing with that right now.
Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. Yeah. Messages are controlled. Narratives are controlled.
Yes.
And even if you have accurate information, if the parties that be don't want it out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Gavin, I'm gonna admit you one more time, and then someone Giagami says, ask him to write something in the private chat to know if he can hear you. So can you
Okay.
even hear us?
Yeah. Type in the private chat.
In the meantime,
Gavin.
I'm gone. In the meantime, I have another super chat from Aisa. Thank you again for the $5 super chat. He says, Dr. Dunbar, BGS, trying to study to get the military
Get in the military.
and further my education. Any tips for math, reading, comprehension, and writing?
Okay. Hmm. I don't know how old you are. I don't
That was my
know.
first thought.
Yeah, I would say a basic GED course would be more than enough to get you in the military. A basic GED course.
You know,
Uh,
Charles is out there. Charles, if you want to come up for a minute and
mhm.
lend your expertise on this,
Yeah,
uh,
I would always say, I always suggest this to anybody, right? I said this to a medical student back when I was in college, right? Um, Take the test and fail it. Take the test and fail it. Go ahead and take the ASVAB test a couple times and fail it, and see what's on there. And you actually know what's on there. You actually know what you need to learn. The test will actually tell you what you need to learn if you take it. A lot of people are actually afraid of failing. Don't be afraid of failing a test. That's the way you learn. So if you
I agree.
yeah. So if you get trying to get into medical school or engineering, get your engineering certificate, take the test and fail it and see what's on it, and
Yeah,
then go
I
back to
agree.
school and see what you learn or what you need to learn.
I
I
joined the
tried the
Navy
ASVAB
at
some time ago.
Hold,
yeah.
Interesting,
Hold
interesting
on,
Gavin,
results.
Gavin, hold
I'm
on.
sorry.
can you hear us?
Can you hear
Gavin?
us,
Yes,
Gavin? Can you
Okay.
hear us?
So you're okay.
yes,
You're connected now. Mr. Heat, I'm gonna go straight to Gavin since
yes. Can you hear me?
he's been
We
trying to
can
get
hear
yeah.
you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You got a delay.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I was saying because I just came in when you said about the ASVAB, and I did take it years ago, and it had some interesting results.
Okay.
Long story short, it was for the Army, and basically the recruiter said, "What did you want to do?" And I told him I was interested in intelligence, and they were kind of gearing me towards counterintel,
Mm-hmm.
linguistics, to be
Mm-hmm.
specific. And when I got to further on to the processing,
Mm-hmm.
I got DQ'd because I had asthma as a kid,
Okay.
and I was hot.
Okay.
Nothing further, no kind of medical waiver. They did not try to give me a medical waiver, but like my recruiter said, oh, they're going to. Nope. Doctor said,
Okay.
"Beep,
Well, the
DQ out."
doctor, yeah, you can be pissed, but the doctor, there's a very good reason for them DQing you. Okay, they don't want you to die if they put
Yep.
you in a certain environment.
Yep.
'Cause you have to really have something that's really wrong with you to ask for them actually DQ you. Because my brother had asthma. He actually did 23 years. So the thing is that it depends how bad it is.
Yeah.
For them to DQ you, it has to be something pretty serious.
Okay.
Wow.
So guys, we'll go for
Yeah.
about 18 more minutes if no one else comes up. Gavin, do you or Mr. Heat, did you have anything else?
No, I think Gavin already covered it. I was just gonna add. I joined when I was what 20, right? On my 30th birthday, I joined.
Okay.
Um,
That's it for now. I'm listening to the discussion. They don't like hog in or butt in.
Okay.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I have a super chat here from Charles Gilmore. Thank you for the $10 super chat. He says, I love learning and I hated the school system. It always seems like time wasted. The dissemination of information was too controlled. You're only allowed to learn what they want to teach you.
Yeah, the problem is public school system teaches to the middle. If you're advanced, then yeah, they're gonna try to pull you back. If you're slow, they try to pull you up. They try to teach to the middle. So for students actually more advanced, it's actually too slow. But that's what the price of free has a cost. Dr. Dunbar can tell you.
Yeah. Well, the reality is nothing is free. Someone's paying for it.
Somebody's paying for it. But so
Oh,
basically,
speaking of
go
which,
go ahead, doctor.
um, I'm sure you're familiar with Jonathan Kozol's writings.
No.
Well, he wrote about well, the one book of his that I read was called Savage Inequalities,
Okay.
and that talked about how the public school system in the United States is basically funded by the tax base
Yeah.
in which that school
It
is
is. It
located.
is. It is. Yes.
So it so in other words, if you live in an affluent community,
Yes.
if you live in a suburban community,
Yeah.
uh, you're probably going to have nicer public schools. If you live in
Yes
an
you
inner
will.
city,
Yes you will.
you're probably going to have schools that aren't so nice.
Yes you will.
So unless you have a way to level that tax base, you're going to have people educated to different proficiencies or with
Yes.
different proficiencies.
Yes you will.
So that to me that seems like an inherent flaw in this system.
Mm,
If it's going to be publicly funded,
uh, it will be, Um, is it a flaw? Unless you want to go to a non-capitalist system, yeah, it will be. Even in a socialist system, there's going to be winners and losers. Okay, um, nobody's going to be educated exactly the same. It's impossible. And your tax base in this country, in a capitalist system, yeah, that's the way it's going to be. Um, some people get lucky, some people don't. The thing is, the public school system is for a basic education. It's a floor. It's not a ceiling. Okay. I want everybody a baseline of how everybody is actually educated. Reading, writing, arithmetic as a base level. That's what it's there for. It's not there just like free medical care. Okay, you can't go to get a Cadillac medical service if you're on Medicaid or Medi-Cal, or if you walk in to an emergency room, you're going to get the baseline because it's publicly funded. But it's a
Mhm.
floor. It's a floor. It's not a ceiling.
Right. Right. Well, you know, the expectation is that um, I don't want to say that the outcomes will be the same,
Hmm.
but that everyone will have a chance to um, make a nice life for themselves. Uh,
Everybody has a chance, but the thing is, it's just like the lottery. Okay, the more tickets you buy, the better your chances get. Yeah,
okay.
everybody has a chance. What percentage chance they have in the system is different.
Okay.
So before the 15 minutes is up, I want to ask a final question.
Go for
Go
it.
ahead.
And what's the ultimate goal here? And again, trying to keep this stream up. What's the ultimate goal here? Being that boys are barely educated, or their education isn't seemingly important anymore. Um, where do we where do we see society? That's a stupid question. Where are we headed? Where are we headed if it continues to progress the ways it is?
Um,
What's the
they
goal?
the goal was for female equity 50 years ago, and most things in life are a zero sum game. In other words, to give somebody something, you have to take something from somebody else. And so, for the girls to actually accelerate and be promoted, you have to take something from the boys, especially the black boys. Black boys are at the bottom, right? So you have to take the jobs and training and positions and opportunities from there and give them to white women and white and black girls, because it's a zero sum game. For them to get, somebody has to lose. Who's the loser? Or who are you willing to sacrifice to give
Right.
somebody an advantage?
So my other question would be, they wanted equity.
Which they do, which
Have
they
they
have.
gotten it? Right.
Yes, yeah, they have it. It's there. The thing is, it didn't turn out to be. The problem is that women are not willing to accept the positions that they were given.
Right.
Women still want men like Dr. Dunbar to be more educated, more prestigious, more status, and have more money. Okay, all women still want that. Everybody wants a Dr. Dunbar, right? But thing is, if you don't put the resources to actually make a Dr. Dunbar, he doesn't. Dr. Dunbar is not cheap. Okay, it takes millions of dollars to actually educate a Dr. Dunbar. He's not cheap. If you don't put the
Right.
resources into black boys to have to get a Dr. Dunbar, you're not going to get a lot of them. We don't have a lot of them because they're very expensive to actually make. So that's the problem. If you don't put the resources in, you're not going to get the product on the other side. And they
Right.
sacrifice that product by giving it to the girls. So you got a lot of educated girls with a lot of opportunities because you took from the boys. It's a zero sum game.
Well,
I see.
I would also add that for me, I think I had um, a similar advantage to what your grandson has.
Hmm.
I had
Educated parents.
that pathway was encouraged
Hmm.
at home, and at some point, the message kind of
Clicked in.
clicked in
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
could be.
yeah, but the thing is, the foundation was already there. All you had to do was access it.
So I was able to, in a way, I was able to slip through the cracks of what the system
Yeah.
was.
Yeah,
was
but you got you actually qualified for technical high school, okay?
yes, yes.
Okay, that had to be. You can't start like at at 13 and be get into the high school. It had to be training from the ground up. So it took a while. It was there. You just never accessed it until you actually got into the technical high school.
Hmm.
But for most kids, how many kids in Buffalo actually went to that high school?
Just a handful.
It's a handful,
Yeah, I think our overall enrollment was what, about 1,000 students.
and a very small population.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so
even for Buffalo.
Yep. And the other, our academic rival, they were smaller than us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
City Honors, they were smaller than us.
Yeah. In other words, a very small hand-picked population.
Mr. Heat, you're going to say something else?
yeah, so they're at equity at this point, but they're still
Hmm.
chugging forward, fighting for more equity. I mean, they're not saying that. Oh, actually, no, they are saying still equity. Obviously, we see something else. So I'm guessing they like the current position.
Hmm.
Well, I would
Um,
say that's a yes and a no.
Yes and a no.
Because
Yeah.
socially, it's created a big mess.
We just
but
had that about the 60-40 split, right?
yeah,
And economically unattractive men, right?
right.
Yep.
Okay, you can't turn that around in 5 years. It took you 40 years to get here. It's going to take you 40 years to get out of it.
So I mean, are you suggesting that the wheel on the ship might be turning?
Uh, it might be turning, but the thing is, turning the Titanic is slow.
I agree. I agree.
It
Agree with
doesn't.
that.
It's not a speedboat.
I agree.
Yeah. And I think part of that is something, or some of the things Black Uru recommends is getting involved in the policy. Well, BGS, you talk about the policy, but
Yeah,
also going to the meetings,
yeah.
getting involved in the political process. It's a multifaceted.
Yeah.
Um, the solutions are multifaceted.
There's one or two things. Are they going to have to start shifting back to the other model, or the women have to accept the position that they've been put in? One of the two. That's why I said the hell with the mating crisis. You created it. Accept the way it is. Accept you being a provider, and accept you paying out of your pocket, and being married and taking care of a family just like men did, or kick rocks.
Yep.
Men had nothing to do with this. This is what you wanted. It's what you got.
Speaking of Black Uru, he's joined us. Welcome, Black
There,
Uru.
there he is. There he is.
Thor's hammer.
Scary,
From
scaring,
Texas.
scaring black men one person at a time. You got to go after your women. Got to go after your women. We can't go after the women, not the women.
Exactly. And boy, our brothers afraid to go after these women.
Yes,
Isn't
they
that
are.
something, man?
That's some.
I
No,
mean,
man,
I know
I
you.
ain't. I ain't scared. I ain't scared. All right, man.
I mean, and first of all, thanks, Dr. Dunbar, for having me on your stream. I've been listening in and out. I was talking to my daughter briefly, so I missed part of what you all were talking about. But, yeah, I mean, and I've said this before. I hope you don't mind my saying it here, Dr. Dunbar. I don't think you're afraid of our women. Uh, Look, I do think, to kind of address, any sort of possible effort to turn things around, which, I think the Titanic analogy was apt. I mean, they couldn't turn the Titanic away from that iceberg fast enough, and I fear that analogy upholds within our situation here. I don't know if we can turn it around fast enough, but I do think, like anything else, in a sort of mortal situation, drastic measures are necessary. And yeah, suing black women and their supporters is a drastic, probably even a Hail Mary pass, with 2 seconds on the clock. But if you can't break the legal structure of how all of what you all have aptly described here earlier comes together, if you can't challenge the legal structure of that, then there is no chance or no hope of turning things around. The system will perpetuate itself and build upon itself. Women will always ask and demand and expect more and more and more advantage, more resource, more convenience. Unless they're compelled to do otherwise, that is what they will continue to do. That's basically endemic with their hypergamous nature itself.
Yep.
So I see an issue with that. So and someone said it here in the chat, being a person who wants to ask questions surrounded by people who don't question leads to conflict. Simply sometimes asking question about what you're seeing here is considered an attack. Not implying anything, just asking the questions about what's going on
Yeah.
is an
Embrace,
attack.
brother, embrace that it is an attack because it is.
It
Look,
is. Yeah.
anytime you're challenging the status quo will consider that to be an attack. You must embrace that's what it is, that's what it's perceived to be, and you're willing to be perceived as a threat. You have to embrace that.
Yeah, it
Look,
doesn't stop
I've
me.
said this before. There's no avoiding the fight, right? If you want things to be better or different. Now, if you want to be assumed within the board collective, well, okay. I mean, I guess some people probably willingly went into the board, but some people probably chose to fight. Maybe they still got assimilated, and some managed to resist. So pick your side. Are you going to be assumed within the board? Are you going to fight and still possibly be assumed within the board? Or are you going to possibly resist that and find some way to remain outside of it? But the board is going to continue what the board does, and that is assimilate.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
And there's no nice way you're
I've
going to
always
be able to
struggled with
communicate.
authority.
There's no
Every
nice
time
way
I
you're going to
mention,
be able to communicate the board not doing. There's no nice argument you're going to be able to make against the board. In fact, you should almost view what's going on if you are familiar with the material. Notice how the
brutally
board just
honest.
didn't give a fuck. There was no negotiating. There was no, as I said, resistance is futile. That's a very apt description of what's going on. Resistance is futile.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. BGS or Mr. Heath, do you have any reaction?
No, he's right. If read the book The End of Men, and read the I always suggest this, The Richer Sex by Liz Monday.
Monday.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you read it, Dr. Dunbar?
I've started it. I have a bunch of books.
Okay, yeah. You
But
sound
I have
like
to
me.
follow through.
Yeah, you sound like me.
Yep. Just have to find some time to finish everything.
Yeah, but yeah, the thing is, um, she said that if women can't be trained to be providers and accept supportive men, then they can't. Basically, feminism is pretty much dead because they've reached their equity, but they can't actualize it because women don't want to actually participate in it. So, and so
So,
this. Go ahead.
this might spur me to finish the book. So, actualization of equity means embracing being the
the
provider.
role that they've been trained to fit in, right? If you've been trained to earn more money than your men, um, and they've taken away from men to actually elevate you, you have to embrace that role, which is providing and actually providing for a family. Same way that men did for thousands of years. You have to take on that leadership and provide a role that men did. If you don't want to do that, then feminism is basically dead because they trained you to actually accept that role the same as a man was, same as a man would. So if you want to have a family, you have to have somebody at home that's supportive. You don't like supportive males, then we have a problem.
That's interesting because from what I'm hearing, I've never heard that being a part of the training, or maybe that's just unnatural for the female gender to do that because they want a man who's higher.
Yeah.
Normally.
So in other words, if they train you to make $150,000 in your top 5%,
Mm-hmm.
and so now you want a guy that's at your level, so to speak, right? Um, and men have not been trained to do that. Men have been trained to make that money and provide for a woman and family no matter what she made. So basically, you've taken away from provider males, you take away those opportunities, that kind of money, that training from provider males, and put a female in its place. So if you're in that place, then you have to do the same thing that the males did, and then women don't want to do that, and that's what the problem is. Okay, now you're stuck. Okay, now you have this 60-40 split. You don't have anybody to mate with because you want somebody that makes more money than you. It's not possible at that level because all
Isn't
the
it worse
resources
than
have gone to putting you in the same spot as that man. You're in the same spot as a man now, but you don't want to take on the responsibilities of that role anymore. That's going to be an issue. Go ahead, Mr. Heat.
I was just gonna ask, isn't it worse than 60-40 now?
The last we looked at was 60-40 as far as all men. Is it worse as far as black men? Yes, but as far as all men, no. They just
Gotcha.
published that in the Wall Street Journal and also Brookings just like a couple of weeks ago.
I got a little
Okay.
catching up to do.
So I'm gonna put this public service announcement out here. I know Roger does it on his channel. This for me, this is what we're talking about. Is not meant to demonize anyone. We're just talking about what is
Mm-hmm.
and what the data is showing. So we're in a bit of a paradox now, and we're just talking about what is.
Yeah, they talked about the paradox 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and they haven't solved it. And women have to solve this. This is their problem to solve. It's not so the mating crisis 60-40 split is not for women to solve because
They'll
for
call you
50
a
years
liar for saying that, BGS.
they can call me a liar if they want. The data is the numbers are the numbers, as Dr. Dunbar would say.
Yeah.
Numbers are numbers.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I think I'm repeating myself, but one of the reasons why I think black men in particular, should begin to sue them is to force an honest recognition of what BGS is describing. Because right now there is no real honest debate of the effect of the policy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think litigating these issues would compel a much more candid, having a real court case would compel a legitimate argument and debate about intersectionality, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Because thus far, intersectionality has
You might be
reigned
right, though.
supreme
You might need to go
without
that
any
far.
challenge, without any polemic, without any real debate. You know, black men have essentially ignored it. White feminists have definitely benefited from it and leveraged it to their benefit. And white men either don't know what the hell it is or just support it just for their own purposes to ultimately maintain some sort of advantage ultimately over black men. So it's an issue that has almost no real scholarship in part because there's never been anyone allowed to have any scholarship opposite to what is argued. And I think if some of these things got into court, it would compel some more legitimate analysis of what of what has put us and kept us in the place we're in.
I don't know who. Hey, Mr. Heat. There's a rustling noise coming from your. Okay. All right. Well, gentlemen, we're at 2 hours. I have one more super chat here. Aisa says at Dr. Dunbar and at BGS, as we've seen numerous of the Dr. Dunbars of the world can't make things work with women. The average guy must almost have to go elsewhere.
It work basically. This is not only at the top; it's also at the bottom. So this is Dr. Dunbar is having the same problem that we're having. That's what's not talked about because women in his class want somebody higher than him. And as you go up, as you go farther, you go up, the less people that they're actually available. And men marry down; they don't marry up. Women marry up. What happens if you're making $300,000 a year? Kind of hard to go up. It gets very thin up there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's easy to go down if you're making $300,000 a year.
Yeah. It's a much different calculus than it was 50 years ago. So,
Yeah.
gentlemen, we're right around 2 hours. Uh, Black Uru, I'm glad you joined us here at the end. I'm gonna see if you guys have any final words, and then I know BGS, you're gonna do a Patreon, I think later on, or
Yeah, later on this afternoon. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I think this is an appropriate place to wrap up. So, do you guys have any parting comments?
If I may, I'll just say that look, if you have a son or nephew or any young male kin that you care for, or maybe kin of friends of yours, and if you have the resources, uh, do do whatever you can that you're capable of doing to help to send that boy to a private male school or military school.
Hmm.
Uh, that message communicates, in my view, everything what you guys have been discussing uh, thus far. And so I appreciate you having me on the panel. Dr. Dunbar, always a pleasure to talk with you, BGS, and Mr. Heath. So have a good afternoon, gentlemen.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Black
Ru.
Uru. Mr. Heat.
Again, all I can say, thank you, gentlemen, for having these conversations, having a platform for people to speak about these things. They don't exist much outside of here. So thank you. That's it.
All right. Master Teacher.
Well, I know we didn't answer all the questions. We talked about Thomas Sowell a little bit. Probably as much as probably you wanted, but
Well, I think my basic question was one of his arguments was schools need to back off from the social dogma, and your response was that's always been a part of the
yes.
to begin with. So yeah, and you said that even just teaching the Pledge of Allegiance or having students do that was part of
Yeah, social dogma.
social
Yeah.
dogma,
Yeah.
as
Uh,
well as having prayer in the school
hmm.
as well. So I think that's the extent that I wanted to include him in the conversation.
Yeah, it's always been there. In fact, if you go back in history, why was it actually brought here in America in the first place? Child care, socialization, education third. Victor said the same thing in his speech. Okay. Uh, we created an ordered Prussian society in Germany, socialization, and then education was actually um, added in with that. Training a loyal, ordered society and an effective workforce.
Okay. I'm going to read a few more comments here before you go. Charles Gilmore says, great conversation. Having control over learning is one thing that has always bothered me and made me hesitant to be a parent. I want to teach my children and not have the learning held back. We have a joke here from Charles. Thomas Sowell's BGS's favorite. Don't let him play you. And then T. Riddler has a question. BGS Ibmore, will your stream later today be public on
No,
YouTube?
it's going to be Patreon.
Okay.
They wanted one, so they pay, so I gotta show up and give them one. So it's gonna be behind the wall. Plus, behind the wall is actually more interesting. I don't know if I sent you the link to the last one, Doctor. Uh,
I
stream I
think I,
did.
I believe I'm a Patreon. I just
Okay,
keeping up with everything is whew.
yeah, yeah. The streams are actually behind the wall, so you're gonna hear stuff behind the wall that you won't hear in public. So
Yeah. As a content creator, for those in the audience, you can't say everything out in the public.
no,
That you might want to say or that your subs might want to hear. You just can't.
yeah.
So that's just the reality of this. And Barry says, great broadcast as always. Thank you, Dr. Dunbar and BGS, for making the Black Manosphere a real place of higher learning.
Yeah, it's the school system and how we educate kids and socialize kids is a very broad subject, and the model is just a model, right? It's actually a machine, and how you program the machine um, is how you get the output on the other side. Prussian school system is actually built to be a mechanized machine. Uh, Input, output, period. And what you put in is what you're going to get out. And um, if you put in, if you want more smarter kids, or if you want a certain kind of socialized kids, that's what you put in. So you're going to get on the other side. But the thing is, how much money do you want to put in? What do you want to teach them? What kind of society do you want? On the other side, if you educating, hundreds of millions of kids to be adults, that has to be determined. And as you can see, it's very effective. That's how come it's used all over. Chinese are actually using it right now. It's a very effective machine. Very good at actually socializing, indoctrination, and actually even educating at a standardized cost. That's why they brought it over here in the first place. It's effective. It's cheap. It's and it's effective for what you pay for it. So that's how come it's so adopted all over the world. It's a good machine. Thing is, it has its time passed. That's the question for another day.
Okay.
We keep looking at it as an evil. It's not evil. It's like science. Science is neither evil nor good. It is. What do you put into it? What's your output?
Yeah. Cooking with CR Senior 00 says, I appreciate the conversations without the hate, passing knowledge to help uplift others and ourselves instead of putting ourselves or others down at the discussion 76. All right. Thank you. Yeah. I want to encourage, Panthros showing up at the end as I'm shutting down. Let's see what he has to say.
He always does that.
He always does that. He must have got up later than me.
No, he shows up at the end because he wants the stream to go on. That's what he does.
All right. I think he started his own stream. Or maybe
I will later today. I'm going to talk about functionality versus morality later today. Hopefully you and BGS will come up there, because I was looking on and off with the Bernard Riley thing and looking at your channel, listening to your channel as well. And, I love this conversation about the Prussian school system. This is probably the most in-depth show anywhere that I've ever heard in my life that speaks on it, because a lot of people are just plainly ignorant towards it. They just don't know. And shout out to the doctor of style and profile over here. Nice good old time with cigars and cognac. Good conversations with Tracy as well.
All right. I noticed you post the Gray Faulkner Initiative. Is that a video?
Oh, that's the PDF.
PDF. All right. I plan to clip off our little Q&A about it, Charles, and re-upload it, so it's its own featured piece. It's on my pile of things to do.
Mm-hmm.
So okay. All right. Well, I'll look out for your stream later on, Charles. Thanks for
thank you.
Coming through. All right. Well, Master Teacher, as always, thank you.
Oh, anytime, Doc. Anytime, Doc.
And for the support.
Yeah. Now, I'm just a regular guy, man. You're the scholar.
Yeah, right.
I'm an ordinary guy.
An ordinary guy. Okay. Well, before I close, I'm gonna plug the Science Channel a little bit here, because me and Nicole had a fun talk on Friday.
Oh, that if you will hardly ever hear two honest people talking about this kind of stuff ever. Go back and actually share that, because that is in depth and coming from people that you trust, and they're telling you stuff that you probably won't hear from doctors or anybody else.
Okay, I'm going to my other channel now. Videos. All right, let me just do the screen share. Yeah, everyone. For those of you who don't know the Scientist Supreme, when she comes back off a hiatus, you will. And she and I it's kind of small there, but that's a picture of that video right there. She and I talked about the prostate gland and prostate cancer on Friday, and getting tested for it and problems with the test for it, and we strayed off into some other areas. But the net of it is the image guy says is that we're having a lot of important discussions over on my Science Channel. I want to turn it into a science hub, And I want to have Nicole back several times, and I'm going to have other guests come over. And so if you could go over there and subscribe, and also watch some of the content. You might not understand everything that's being said, but whatever little bits you could take away from it for your own knowledge, for encouraging knowledge of the STEMs in your community, your household, that's important. I need to get to I've got the subscribers, but I need to get the hours, the watch hours up to get
and the thing is that you got to use things like this as keys, right? Because
That's right.
if you have this knowledge and
Yes.
you go to your doctor and you use certain terms, you get a different outcome from your doctor. Oh, he knows something because he's not supposed to know that. And they'll actually give you better care because they think that you actually know more than you do just by saying a few words, a few key terms.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, everyone in the channel, I'll drop the link in the chat right now, and then I'm gonna shut this down. So if you want to go over there and sub, and again, take a look around, see what you know.
Yeah.
And the community chat. There's some things I cannot verbally talk about over there. Nicole can't verbally talk about certain things, but the community chat, we're leaving valuable information in the community chat, the community tab. So you have our vantage point for what some of these things mean.
Yeah. Go over there and watch for 5-10 minutes. Get the view count up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to shut this down. Master Teacher, thank you.
Appreciate you.
I'll be looking for you in the YouTube streets, and hope to have you back again sometime soon.
All right, Doc.
All right.
Peace.
All right, everyone. Yeah. So thank you for everyone who watched this stream. We started off talking about the Prussian school system. That's an important aspect of what's going on in the world today, and pretty much all of us went through the United States version of that system, and I just wanted to have a discussion on it. Nothing is said in these streams to demonize anyone. I think I like to have a discussion. I like to have discussions on what is and what these things are for deeper understanding and for what they mean today. So that's always the intent, just to have an honest, critical discussion of what's going on. So thank you to everyone who donated. Thank you to everyone who watched. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye. Let me end this.